Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to Friday. We have made it another week through our school. So we are going to get started. Remember, we have our word web, our daily comprehension, our interactive journals, which should always be in front of you, especially today because we are going to be talking about figurative language and the circulatory story, which is accessible through Teams. So the word we are going to look for today is avileus. So we're going to go ahead and go to the back of the the back of the glossary of the circulatory story, and we're going to write the definition. Don't forget, we have to find a synonym and draw a small picture. So we could already see that avileus is the first page in the glossary, boys and girls, and it means, so it's in plural, it's alveoli, and it's a small air sac in the lungs where the gas exchange or the carbon dioxide for oxygen occurs. So we know that we're going to start reading about what? The lungs. The lungs is next. We learned about the heart. Now the lungs is next. I'm going to give you 1 minute to copy the word for avileus, the definition for avileus, which is small air sac in the lungs where the gas exchange carbon dioxide for oxygen occurs. So you can, in your small picture, you can draw a little sac. You could even label it kind of like a diagram. You have 30 seconds. A synonym, you can even write the word sac because it's something that is carried on. You have 20 seconds. Last 15 seconds. Remember, we're copying this word, avileus. 10. And time is up. Park your pencils and let's go ahead and move on. Okay, boys and girls, so today we are going to student will be able to differentiate between literal and figurative language using a T-chart. Remember, figurative language includes an idiom, it's raining cats and dogs, onomatopoeia like boom, bang, pow, consonants, a simile using like or as, a metaphor comparing two things as well but using is or are. So make sure you have your paper in front of you. Don't forget to write these key points. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to write these key points. So figurative language key points. Remember, write the what. We're going to identify figurative language, and some examples I gave you are simile, metaphor, onomatopoeia, alliteration. How are we going to do this? We're going to ask two questions. What does this statement mean? What does it say? And why did the author use figurative language? So right now you're copying the what and the how key points for figurative language in your notebook. You have 30 seconds. So boys and girls, why is it important for you to understand figurative language? Well, figurative language is used by authors to help convey a meaning. So to give you something, give you an idea. For example, if I say it's raining cats and dogs and you see outside and you're like, wait, it's not. There's no way that can happen. I'm just trying to emphasize, make a point that it's raining extremely hard outside. Same thing if I say I am starving, I can eat a whole horse. I don't mean literally, I mean figuratively, that I'm starving. I probably haven't eaten all day and my stomach is rumbling and trembling all around. Okay, boys and girls, so our goal for today, remember, we're going to identify and we're going to write the figurative language. We're also going to write the literal meaning, so the actual meaning of that language. And then we're going to read pages 28 to 31. So make sure you open up your book and go to page 28. Okay, so inferior or superior, we've come a long way from that little cell that passed gas. In fact, you're in a vein called the inferior vena cava, and you're almost back to the heart. You have completed a trip through one part of the circuit of the body's circulatory system, the system circuit. This circuit nourishes most of the body with blood. So we have moved away from the heart, boys and girls. Remember, the circulatory story goes throughout your whole body. We have moved away from the heart. Now there's nothing inferior about the inferior vena cava. It just means that blood going through it has been in the lower part of the body. If you've been in the upper body, you would have gone through the superior vena cava. The blood in both these veins is oxygen poor. or deoxygenated, because a lot of the oxygen from the red blood cells was given to the body cells. Remember, previous to this, we saw that the red blood cells give the oxygen to the body cells, and the body cells in return give carbon dioxide. So look what it's saying. The green creature saying, almost there. System circuits. So I'm going to zoom out so I can show you this text feature. So this text feature is, what is it called, boys and girls? It is pointing to the heart, to the blood supply to the lungs, the red arteries, it's telling you. And then it's telling you that the arteries are red and the veins are blue. What is this called? And I can also see the inside of her body. So if you said this is a diagram, you are correct. It's pointing to each part of her body, and it's also telling you or explaining to you what it is. And then it's also a what, because I can see inside. It is a cutaway. Yes, I can see inside her body. Usually that's not how humans walk. Remember, we can't see inside of your body. We can't see your beating heart. We can't see your lungs. We definitely cannot see your arteries or your veins. Maybe if you can see your arm, turn it around. And if you look at your forearms, you might be able to see some veins, but not too much. Not like the diagram, not like the illustration above. So we know the circulatory story, remember, look, it travels all around your body, all through your toes, your right, your left, your arms, your brain, your face, everywhere. Page 30, déjà vu. Look at what this is pointing to. The pulmonary valve, the tricuspid valve, and it's closed. So kind of like the valves that were open and closed. I know this section is going to be about them opening and closing. They have different names, so I know I'm in a different part of the body. The inferior vena cava brings you into the heart at the right atrium. Then it's down through the tricuspid valve, which works just like the mitral valve, but it's located between the right atrium and the left ventricle. It feels like we've done something like this before. Yes, it does, right? So déjà vu means you know those times when you wake up and you're like, wait, I feel like I've already done this. Or you have those days when you're like, wait, I feel like I've already dreamt of this before, and then something's going to happen next, and then suddenly it happens. It might be a coincidence. It might be déjà vu. Déjà vu just means that you probably already lived it before. So when that happens, it just means our brain is taking a little bit longer than usual to process the information. So it feels like you're living that same moment twice. How shocking. So I know that something's going to be shocking in this section. Before you leave for the right ventricle, there's something in the right atrium that you might like to check out. The cyanotrol node. The most amazing little group of cells is known as the heart's natural peacemaker. Oh, boys and girls, we're talking about the natural peacemaker. That's what I mean by shocking. It sends electrical signals to the atrium and ventricles, telling them to beat at a certain rate, pace or rate. So when a person is exercising, the heart's chamber will contract more quickly, sending more blood and therefore more oxygen to the body cells than when the person is at rest and doesn't need as much oxygen. Did you get a charge out of that? So I'm going to zoom out. So remember, when does it shock you? And I don't mean literally shock that you can't move. I mean the actual heart is shocking, sending you a little shock so that you can go and get more oxygen. Because what happens if you stand up and do 10 jumping jacks, or if you run around the house 10 times? You're going to be out of breath, right? So that means you're breathing in faster and you're exhaling faster. So that means your heart has to work faster. You got to get more oxygen throughout your body. So how is that happening? Well, the heart has to send a signal that makes everything get everywhere, the oxygen everywhere throughout your body a little bit faster. And what is that called? Look at where the author is pointing with this illustration in this diagram. It's pointing to the cyanotrol node, I sing the body electric thumb. Ooh, what type of figurative language is that, boys and girls? Thumb, boom, pow. It is onomatopoeia. Good job. Remember that because we are going to come back to that. Okay, boys and girls, so make sure you open your journal. Make sure you start putting your name, your date, and the go. We are on lesson 14. And this one we're going to go ahead and title it Figurative Language. So remember, we're learning about figurative language, which your figurative anchor chart should be in front of you. You always want to make sure you have your anchor charts in front of you because they guide you. So do your key points. So I'm going to give you 5 more seconds to go ahead and write that. And remember, this is what your figurative anchor chart looks like. So it's labeled figurative language, and we copied all these definitions. Okay, the first one I want to look at is the one that we just read. So it's on this page. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And it's right here. And the author used this type of figurative language. So I want you to write here figurative. Remember, because we're going to use a T-chart, figurative language, and then do a line all the way to the bottom, and then put literal language. You don't have to write as big as me. I have to write big so that everybody can see. So this side says figurative language. This side says literal language. And I'm going to put a note here for me. Literal means the real or the actual meaning. And if you have a highlighter, you're more than welcome to highlight this so that you can remember. So it's the real or the actual meaning. That is what literal means. So figurative is just a figure of speech. And usually the author uses that to make a point. So it's to make a point. If you have a different highlighter, you can use that. I'm going to use my red pen so that it can look a little different. So it's a figure of speech and it's to make a point. I know that's what figurative language is. And I know in page 31, so I'm going to write here page 31, it uses thumb. So I'm going to copy it here. Now, what type of figurative language is that? So when we look at our anchor chart, what does it say? Is it comparing two things using like or as? No. Is it a metaphor comparing two things is or are? No. Is it an idiom? It's a phrase with different meaning, like it's raining cats and dogs. No. Is it an obvious exaggeration, like I'm so hungry I could eat a horse? No. Is it an alliteration? It repeats the beginning sound of words near each other? Well, no, there's no more words. Is it personification? Is it that describes human things that are saying human qualities? Like my cat Tofu says hello? No. Is it onomatopoeia? It's a word that creates a sound, like pow, boom, oink, choo, choo. Yes, it's onomatopoeia. So let's go ahead and write that. So we're going to write onomatopoeia. Now, why did the author choose to write or to use onomatopoeia with the word thump? Why? What is the actual meaning? Remember, the sionitro note does what? It gives a shock. So if it gives a shock, what is the heart doing? What is a thump? What does it mean? That means the heart is beating. So I'm going to write it here. The heart is beating. So that thumb that the author used as onomatopoeia, it literally means that the heart is beating. So instead of the author saying the heart is beating, making it boring, they make it more interesting by using figurative language. I'm going to give you 15 more seconds to write that. Okay, next page I want to go to is, we're going to write it right here, is going to be page 7. And on page 7, it looks like this. It's the one that says, go with the flow. We know that we were talking about the red blood cells. And I want you to look at this specific last sentence. It says, without plasma, these cells would cause a traffic jam. I'm going to copy that sentence here. Remember, we use quotations because we're going to copy the exact same sentence. So, without plasma, these cells would cause a traffic jam. Don't forget to end your quotation. You're closing it. So without these cells, without plasma, these cells would cause a traffic jam. Boys and girls, do they literally mean a real traffic jam? Like inside of your body, there's going to be police officers and firefighters and paramedics trying to help your red blood cells? No, right? It's just a figure of speech. The author's trying to make a point. What is the point he's actually trying to make? That red blood cells wouldn't be able to travel anywhere, right? So let's go ahead and write it here. So the actual reason for this figure of speech is that, I'm going to move it this way, without plasma, red blood cells can't travel the body freely. So they wouldn't be able to travel freely, right? Because then they'll be stuck. There's no plasma. It's like there's no water and they can't travel through. Remember, the plasma is a yellow gooey thing that we saw here. Okay. Now, what type of figurative language? So I'm going to zoom on a little bit. What type of figurative language is this? Without traffic jam, without plasma, there would be a traffic jam. Remember, your anchor chart should be in front of you. Is it comparing two things? Is it comparing plasma to anything? No, so I know it's not a simile or a metaphor. Is it an idiom? Is it a phrase with a different meaning? It's raining cats and dogs. Well, no. Is it a hyperbole? It's in a big, obvious exaggeration. Is it an exaggeration? Like, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse. Yes, right? It is a hyperbole. So let's go ahead and write that. We're going to write hyperbole. So here I'm going to write hyperbole. And just so that I remember, I know that it's an exaggeration. They don't literally mean that they're going to call the cops, the ambulance, the firefighters because the plasma doesn't let the red blood cells travel. No, it's just a figure of speech. The author's trying to make a point. I know it looks a little dark. So let me just zoom in. So this is what we wrote. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and give you 1 minute to go ahead and copy that. Sorry, 30 seconds. I know that we've been here for a little bit, so I'm going to start the timer, 30 seconds. And if you've already finished with that, go to page 9 and challenge yourself. Let's see if you can find the figurative language and then the actual meaning. So you have 15 seconds to copy. Page 9 looks like this. Stay on your own site. Don't forget, as a good reader, go back and reread it. 5 seconds. And time. So on this page, I want you to focus on where it says, you might think of your heart as a divided highway. A divider separates the lanes and cars must stay in their own lane. If not, there is trouble. Boys and girls, here the author said that we should think of a heart as a divided highway. So I'm going to come back here and write that. So remember, use quotations. So you might think of your heart, or of the heart, sorry, as a divided highway. But boys and girls, does it literally mean that you should compare it to that? I'm sorry, that it literally is a highway? Do we literally have cars inside of our system that might crash? No, right? It's just something that the author is using to make a point. I know he's trying to make a point. Now, what is that point, boys and girls? First, we need to find out what type of figurative language he is using. So what type is it? Is he comparing two things? Well, yeah, he is comparing. What is he comparing? Your heart as a divided highway. Okay, well, is he using like or as? Yes, he is, right? Look what it says. You might think of the heart as a divided highway. So it's comparing it to being divided. So your heart being divided as a highway. So it's saying the way that it's divided could be compared to a highway. So it is a simile. Let's go ahead and write that down. So it is a simile. And I'm going to circle the word. If you also have a highlighter, you can go ahead and highlight it. Now, boys and girls, what is the actual meaning of you think of the heart? You might think of the heart as a divided highway. What's the actual meaning? That the heart has different what? Jobs. Let's go ahead and write that. So the heart has different jobs, just like the highway that the author compared it to. It has different jobs. So that means everything has to stay in their own site. So I'm going to give you 30 more seconds to go ahead and copy that. And I know it doesn't look the best. So let me go ahead and move a little bit. Okay, let me zoom out so that you can see that. Oh, you can hear my stomach rumbling and crumbling in there. I'm starving. I can eat a horse. 10 more seconds. And time. So I know that I wrote extremely big for everybody to see, but if you have space, you can continue writing. If not, I have to turn it over. And on the back side of my page, remember, we waste no pages. We are going to do in the live session, page 10 and 25. So I'm going to write here page 10. I'm going to draw my line again, and then page 25. Don't forget to label it the figurative language, or the figurative side, and then the literal language, or the actual meaning. Once you are done writing this, you may put this on the side and go ahead and take out your Friday's paper, which is making connections. And I love making connection, boys and girls. Well, it is to a personal experience, whether it's to other text, or well, it might be to society or to the world. So let me give you an example of what that might sound like when I make connections. So I know that a connection that I can make is that maybe my grandma has suffered from heart issues. So that could be a personal connection. So here I can write, my grandma has, maybe she has leaky valves. Remember, the valves don't close and open correctly, so that means the blood is going in and out. Another one could be, maybe you suffer from leaky valves. Maybe you don't get enough oxygen. Maybe your white blood cell count is low. Maybe your doctor told you that you have a low white blood cell count. That's why you might almost be getting sick all the time. So that's how you make a connection to the text. From your personal experience, how can you make a connection? Well, my grandma has leaky valves. Her heart isn't that well. That means that her heart has to work harder. Any other connection? If you don't know of any personal connections, then you can write my example. My grandma has leaky valves. Usually we hear those from older people. Now, how can I make a connection to other texts? So this is to other texts that we have read. We have read the biographies of Clara Barton, Anne Frank, and Helen Keller. So you might be thinking, oh, and thank you, Mr. Falker, from Trisha. Remember, she was being bullied. So how can we make a connection from the circulatory story to what we have read? So all of those have something in common, right? It's talking about the heart. So in the biographies, it's talking about what type of heart? A figurative heart. And the circulatory story is talking about a literal or an actual or real heart. Okay, so in the biographies it talks about a figurative heart, while the text talks about a literal heart. Remember, what are some examples of a literal heart? It is strong and it's healthy. So those are my two examples. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out so that you can see. Now, how can I make a connection to society, to the world, to everyday life? Remember, what does the text tell me that I should do? I know that in order to have a healthy heart, my valves have to open and close correctly. I should get enough oxygen to all parts of my body. I know white blood cells fight diseases. So that's a connection we can make to society, right? To the world. Because if I do fall, I could cut myself, right? To society. So how can I make a connection? So the circulatory story taught me about white blood cells. So now we know we can go tell mom, dad, grandma, uncle, your friend, your cousin that white blood cells help the body. So how do they help the body? Helping the body against, what does it help against? Against certain diseases, right? And now we know the reason why we get a scab. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to copy this. Okay, boys and girls, so you have 40 seconds. Remember, we made a connection from the circulatory story to a personal experience. Maybe your grandma has a heart that isn't that healthy, your uncle, your neighbor maybe, if you talk to them. And then we made a connection to other texts. For example, in the biographies, it talks about a figurative heart, while the text that we are reading talks about literal heart. It's strong and it's healthy. And then we made a connection to society, to the world, to everyday life. How? Well, because the circulatory story taught me about white blood cells helping the body against certain diseases. You have the last 20 seconds. Now, you can copy other examples. If you learn more about the circulatory story, perhaps now you know that you have a healthy and strong heart and that the heart is a muscle, then yes, make a connection. Now you know that the more that you exercise, the stronger your heart gets. Yes, that's another example. You have the last 5 seconds. And if you're finished, boys and girls, you can go ahead and close. Put this away. Make sure you have your composition in front of you. I will see you in class. Be ready to check your homework. Have your tune out in front of you. I'll see you.